Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Flags in a Gym, a podcast dedicated to all things color guard. My name is Eric. I'm your host and resident color guard nerd. And for today's episode, we're reviewing and recapping the Charlotte and Austin regionals from this past weekend. Like in the previous ones, we're going to be talking about what everyone is doing, how everyone is doing, and giving some general opinions. So sit back, relax, and let's talk some color guard. Okay, before we get started, let's just do a little housekeeping. I do want to start off by saying I lied last episode. I'm sorry. I said this was going to be the final regional recap episode, and then I was looking at the calendar and I noticed that the Manhattan Beach regional was this upcoming weekend, so 4 days from now when you're hearing this. And for some reason, I thought it was later in the season, so we're going to be covering the Manhattan Beach regional because it's a huge California regional and everyone's there. Fantasia, Boxardium, Icon, Arcadia, Ayala, El Dorado, they're all there, So we're going to be talking about that one because I haven't seen them yet, other than some low angled YouTube videos that aren't the best quality. So this way we get to see them from a good viewpoint. I also do want to give a special little shout out to two friends I've made over on Instagram. We've been chatting a lot just about color guard and the podcast in general. So Artemio Garcia and Will Stevenson, hi. It's been so great talking with you and just chatting with you. I had a lot of fun, and I really appreciate all your kind words about the podcast. It's been very kind. Thank you. And then lastly, the Bethlehem Regional is coming up in 2 weeks. I will be there enjoying all the pageantry. And if you're going to be there, I would love to meet you and say hi. So if you're there, I hope to see you. Okay, let's talk about the regionals. We're covering two regionals today, the two that were televised on Flow, the Austin and the Charlotte Regional. They were both very big regionals. This was actually a huge regional weekend. And I'm not going to do separate episodes, so we're going to kind of combine them into one. I was doing a lot of back and forth, trying to watch all of the shows and seeing that I could see everybody. Then I had to watch replays on Monday just because there was a lot to watch. Hope continues to be the song of the year. 3 more guards are using it across these regionals. I think we're going to be overrun at Dayton. We are. So I hope you like the song. I feel bad for the world guards that are using it because by the time we get to world finals, we're going to have heard this a lot and people are going to be like, ugh, again. Also, I do want to talk briefly about scoring. I was looking at scores from the past weekend across all of the regionals, and scoring was wonky this past weekend, especially Chicago. Indy was 2 weeks ago, and then this past weekend was Chicago, Austin, Charlotte, and all that. There were quite a few guards that went to the Indianapolis regional that also went to the Chicago regional. And remember, these were literally 1 week apart. And there were guards that jumped 8 to 11 points like in 1 week. It's absolutely insane. And I feel like Chicago, the scores were a little inflated. And then in other regionals, like I think Texas, I think the scores were low, especially Woodlands. Seeing that show, watching it probably 7 or 8 times because I kept rewinding because I was so mind blown by it and everything that was happening, and they only got an 84. I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Um, we're gonna talk about that, and we're gonna talk about the show later. I just feel scoring's a little wonky right now, I am worried for the groups that popped a high number this week, and then now they're expected to get that number again, and when they go to another regional, that could drop. That's deflating, and this is nothing on the guards, right? This is the judges. The judges are the ones giving the scores. And I just thought the Chicago scores were really out of whack given what happened at Indy. Now, granted, Indy might have been underscored. And, the more I think about it, I do kind of think that is part of it. So it could be Indy was underscored coupled with Chicago being overscored, which is why you have this huge gap in scoring. I mean, you had an independent A guard get a 78 and change at Indy, and then they popped an 89 at Chicago, which is wild. I mean, that's any guard. It doesn't matter who it is. You jump 11 points in one regional weekend, and you went from a WGI regional to another WGI regional. It's not going to really affect much other than seeding. And then possibly, if scores drop later on because you were popped a number, and hopefully it doesn't impact like the review process. Because remember, in A class, the top 2 guards are automatically reviewed for reclassification to get moved to open. And then I believe in open, it's just the winner. So if you win the regional in your class, you're automatically reviewed. Now, it's not very common that people get reclassified and promoted, I'm worried that this is going to negatively impact some guards that they don't really have control over because they don't put the numbers down. They just go on and put on the show, and then the judges pick the number. So I do think numbers were a little off. I do think Chicago was high. I do think Texas was a little low. So I'm sure it'll all balance at the end. We have Power Regional starting up very soon, where we're going to be seeing double panels and the numbers are really going to get smoothed out. And once again, this all means nothing. Everything resets when we get to Dayton and everybody is there and they're being judged by the same panels. And then we really see where everybody truly lies. The only impact this is going to have is on seating, and that really is only going to affect the A guards and maybe some of the open guards because you might get put in a weird spot. But with A guards, there's 140 of them, and you can get a really crappy spot, based on your seating. So, as I said before, this was a huge regional weekend. We had 5 2-day regionals with tons of guards. I mean, Texas, Philadelphia, Charlotte, Chicago, and Phoenix were all 2-day regionals. And then there was the 1-day regional in Nebraska. As for how we're going to cover the shows this week, I'm going to go class by class and do both regionals at the same time. So I'll do Scholastic A for Texas and then Scholastic A for Charlotte. And then we'll move on to Independent A. I'm not going to do regional, then the other regional. We're going to move by class. I'm going to be doing the top 3 for A and Open and then the World Guards because there are so many. The Austin Regional had 20 Scholastic A finalists, and Charlotte had 18, and then Texas also had 11 in Scholastic Open finals. So there's no way I can do everyone. Even trying to cherry pick highlights, I don't even think I can do that. I've typed up my outline, and it is over 9 pages of just the top threes and the worlds and whatnot. So if I move quickly, it's because I don't want to be here for, like I said last week, I don't want to be talking for 4 hours. And you don't want to listen to me talk for 4 hours. So we're going to move along. And then lastly, remember, this is all in good fun. I'm just giving my personal feedback and opinions on the shows. We do not, and will not send hate of any kind to any of the members or staff of these programs. It's okay to critique a program and it's okay to not like a program and to voice your opinions on it. And you can do that without being hateful. And that's what we're going to do here. So if I didn't care for a show or I didn't understand a show, I'm going to say that, but I'm not going to be like, I hate this show. They're awful. Blah, blah, blah. Why do they even exist? No, we're not. This is not what we're doing. Let's start with Scholastic A. And we're going to start with Texas, just because they're at the top of my outline. I may be doing Charlotte first on other classes, so I tried to keep this consistent, but I had to type up a lot here. Third place was Veterans Memorial High School, and their show is called Blue Jean Baby, and they had a floor that was all like denim pockets. It was a really cute floor, and they brought out these white props resembling fringe, and they kind of placed them on top of one of the pockets, and the rest were just kind of on the side of the floor, and I was a little disappointed by that. Like, I thought, like, oh, what are they going to do with the fringe? And it just kind of sat on the floor. Like, it was literally just a decoration. It wasn't like a used prop. They're doing Tiny Dancer by Nolan Neal, a cover of the Elton John song. And they start out with rifles and body, and the guns are incredibly strong. Very, very strong guns. And I feel like they feature their superstars without writing the whole show around them, which I greatly appreciated. We talked about that in the Salem Regional, where I'm just tired of guards writing their show around a singular performer and everything happens around this one person. So they don't do that. I mean, they have a couple superstars that they feature, but they don't write the show around them. And I do wish that they did more with the fringe, just because I was like, it was there. They grabbed it a couple times and flung it. But other than the one that was in the middle of the floor, there was one strip in the middle of the floor. The rest was all the way on the left side along the left edge. They just kind of sat there and they would do something with it. But I mean, they're on the side of the floor. Just for me, I was like, I wish you could do more with the fringe. But it was a cute show. Second place at Austin was Jordan High School, and they were first after prelims. And they're doing an operator telephone pole show. They have telephone props that go across the floor diagonally. So if you're looking at the floor, they start in the left front and then they go to the back right. And they have 3 poles and there's, a rope connecting them like a telephone wire. And they toss over them and they spin under them and they, kind of move all around them. And then the floor itself is kind of like a farm cornfield kind of prop, like there's a fence line that runs along the line of where the telephone poles is. And it's a very talented guard. They did have a bit of a rough run in finals, which I think is why they ended up in second, but it was just an overall very cute show. First place was the Woodlands A, and their show's called The Joke. And y'all, this entire program is incredible. And when I say the program, I'm talking about the system that the Woodlands has set up. Like I watched their World Guard, then I watched their A Guard, and I'm pretty sure they have a guard below the A Guard. If this staff stays here, this guard is set for years. I mean, the World Guard is amazing, and the A Guard is like crazy good too, and it's huge. Like I think each guard has like 40 performers on the floor. As for the Woodland Show, it's a black floor with three spotlights converging into a singular like performance spot, and they have like a little stool there, and that's kind of near the back right. And it's a cute show, but it gets better and better over time. Like by the beginning, you're like, okay, this is fine, and then they just it keeps building and building, and the ending flag feature is just like crazy. I'm like, this is an A guard. Like, I mean, I mean, these are clearly extremely well trained performers. And I'm sure they have the added incentive of, I want to be in the World Guard. I want to be on the world team. So I'm sure there's a lot of like good peer pressure to be better and stronger. So I mean, it's wild. I mean, it's so crazy that they have two large, incredibly talented guards. Like, and I love that their A guard doesn't feel like an afterthought because let's review some schools and their JV teams, usually not these big programs. Schools like Avon, the Woodlands, Tarpon, Carmel, these big programs, they treat their A guards and their feeder programs very well. But we'll see other programs where, they're just kind of like there. And I'm like, this clearly is not happening here. Like I said, if this staff stays here, this school is going to be set for a very long time, and they're going to be at the top of world. And honestly, this A guard kid could get moved to open if they keep plugging away like this. Let's move over to Charlotte. Your third place Scholastic A guard was Wando High School, and their show is called Operator, and they're using Operator by Jim Croce. The interesting thing here, so the scores were super tight here over at Charlotte. So third place was only 0.02 ahead of fourth. And then first place was only 0.08 ahead of second. So there was a decent spread between second and third, but like first and second were super tight, and then third and fourth were even tighter. Lexington High School was in fourth, and they just missed third by 0.02. But as for Wando, their floor looks to be like a switchboard. It's kind of hard to figure. I thought it was logs at first, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, oh wait, the show is Operator. So I think it's supposed to be like a telephone switchboard from way back in the day. They have some chairs that just kind of stay stationary along a diagonal on the floor, and they're in these pretty peach and light pink uniforms. They have decent moments on weapon, but I feel they struggle a bit in connecting them together. To kind of put it into judges speak, the vertical design is there, but I feel the horizontal needs more development. So if you don't know, your vertical design is your moments, right? You have your body feature, weapon feature, flag feature, right? Let's just say those are your three big moments. Obviously, we have more than that, but we're just kind of narrowing this down for explanation. The horizontal design is how you get from moment to moment, what you do in between. And I think that's where Wando could use a little more development. They clearly have their moments set and they shine in those moments, but it's getting between them where it's kind of like, okay, what are we doing here? They have a beautiful double 45 in the flag feature. So kudos, great job. Second place was Nation Ford High School, and they were first after prelims, but they were super tight with the winner, River Bluff. And this was my favorite of the Scholastic A. I loved it. It was super cute. It was a period show that used like old World War II photos that they opened up on the floor. And they were in like 40s garb and like beiges and whites and such. And they used Take On Me by Cinematic Pop. And, it's the fun 80s smash hit that we all know. And this was a cool cover of it that wasn't slow and drawn out, but it was really, really nice. And the kids are very good. They did have a bit of a rough run in finals, which is why I think they ended up in second, but the talent is definitely there. It's high energy. They stage very well, taking in their floor design and such, like because they have a stage prop in the back left, and then they have three large photos that open up on the floor, and they'll have moments within those photos. And they have like, the iconic sailor kissing the woman, she's leaning back and he's bent over her, giving her that big kiss, those like iconic photos. And that's what they use. Yeah, I love it. It's a great show. Super cute. I hope to see it at Dayton. I don't know if they're going or not. It's hard with all these guards to see who's going, but if they are, I wish them the best of luck. First place in Charlotte was River Bluff High School, and their show was called Lux Eterna. And this floor was beautiful. It was a stained glass window floor. Like they had a vinyl prop in the corner that was like stained glass window. And then the floor was the imaging of like the light coming through and shining across. It was just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful floor. They open with a beautiful body statement into saber and very pretty flags of a red, blue, and gold. And the music is very beautiful chorales, what you'd expect. Like if you saw a cathedral stained glass floor open up and you started hearing these like chorales and whatnot, you're like, oh, okay, makes perfect sense. And they're beautiful. They use a couple different ones, but there's one that, like "We Will Stand Together," I know is in there, and it's a really pretty show and well done. It's a little calmer than the Nation Forward, but it's still very well done. So, congrats to River Bluff. Let's move on to Independent A. We had 5 guards total. So, Texas first. We have, second place was Tarleton State. I'm abbreviating their name. They had a lot more to their name, but it was Tarleton State Color Guard, and they're doing a Guardians of the Galaxy show. And it was a cute, entertaining show, but it clearly wasn't designed to compete. This wasn't meant to be like a competitive show. I think this is a college that wanted to put a guard together and go out and perform on the floor. And I do not mean that in any kind of negative way. Guard is for everyone. And if anybody wants to go out and spin and have a great time, I am here for it. If they wanted to go competitive, I think they'd have a good chance at doing that because there is a lot of talent on this guard. I think it's just kind of lacking in the design aspect. They were cracking tosses with turnarounds. They all have the strength to get things around. I mean, seriously, the opportunity is there. So if this program wanted to go competitive, you have the talent there. You just need the design team to come in and do it. But it was a fun show. They used music and voiceovers from the Guardians of the Galaxy, and what I think they actually called it Star Lord was the actual name. But cute show, just kind of there for entertainment. I love it. Like I said last week, I love being entertained. I love entertaining Color Guard, so there's nothing wrong with that. First place was Redemption, and their show is called Cut Me Loose, and the song is also called Cut Me Loose, but I do not know who sings it. I was trying to Shazam it, and I think I forgot to on this one. Their whole floor is a bunch of designs of sewing notions. So like there's buttons and there's a measuring tape and there's pins and scissors and it's all it's all digitally printed whatnot and it's a big layout. They put sewing noises over the song, so you'll hear like a sewing machine, you'll hear scissors and whatnot. And it was fine. The thing I took away from it is so I get their color story, but the colors are just too harsh. They're using the primary colors of red, yellow, and blue. And those colors are evident within their floor design, but in the floor design, they're more muted. And they are using like Crayola, super saturated, stark colors. Like when you think red, they're using a red flag. And when you think blue, they are using a blue flag as opposed to maybe a softer blue, a softer red. So the colors just seem harsh and doesn't seem to line up with the design of the show. When I was looking at the floor, I'm like, oh, okay, I see the colors in there. I see what they're going for, but they just don't match up because the floor has those softer colors, like that softer pale yellow of the measuring tape that you would have. And then they pull out this just like bright Mr. Golden Sun lemon yellow flag, and it just doesn't line up. I do think that would help them if they could, maybe go to more muted color palette, just because the colors are harsh, I guess, on the effect side. But it was a fine A-class show. Congrats to them. I'm coming back to this. I feel like now that I'm done talking, I feel like I've just trashed it. I didn't mean to. It was just the one. It was my biggest take back from the show. Is just the color story. The talent. They do have talented performers. Their weapons are very good. And I watched a lot of Color Guard and I was taking notes. And this I'm just going off of my main takeaway from it. And that was the colors. The colors were just super harsh. But I love you guys. I promise. Moving over to Charlotte. Third place was Charlestown Independent, and their show is called Just Somebody. And this is another typewriter show. We're seeing another little theme pop up here. So there are three typewriter shows so far this year with Charlestown, Noir Independent, and Gage Chile Open. Their floor is cool. So their floor is designed like a typewriter. So they have like the keyboard and the key strikes. I don't know what you would call those things. The things that fly up and actually type the letters. I don't know what those are called. I'll have to look that up. At the bottom and then on the sides is black, and at the top they have like a giant rectangle cut out of the middle of the floor where the paper would be. Kind of cool. And then they have a single desk in the back with somebody typing on a typewriter. They use a bunch of different songs. They start with the music from Psycho, the Hitchcock film. They end up going into somebody that I used to know by Gautier. Remember that song that was huge? What, God, was that 10 years ago now? I don't even remember anymore. They start with the entire guard on rifle, and then they move to a jazzy, slower section with some really pretty green ombre flags. I liked the flags, thought they were pretty. They had some good moments, but it did feel very pedestrian at times. And I do feel they're stronger on flag because they had some nice, clean flag moments. That was pretty much my takeaway from that. Second place was JMU, James Madison University Nuance A. So remember, they have two guards. Their A guards show is rose colored rear view, and they're using the song of that name by Grace Potter. And they have two of the old brown bus seats on the floor, and they use them and move them around. And all I could do when I saw them setting up and I saw these brown seats is I could smell them through my TV. Like, just seeing them brought back that musty bus smell of when you're going to school at, 6:30 in the morning, or you're coming home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in the summer, and it's just that hot bus smell. I mean, they really triggered a core memory in this when they were setting up. They have a nice silver lame flag feature kind of near the beginning of the show, and they end with a nice bright pink flag feature at the end. Obviously, rose colored rear view. They're wearing rose colored glasses. They're in like a pink, magenta y kind of uniform. And it's a cute little sassy show. I do think it needs an injection of speed at times to match the soundtrack and just kind of give the pace of the show some variety. But it's a solid A-class show. I will say there's a trend this year of pink flags in your flag ensemble. We're seeing it a lot. So pink is the color of the season. But I liked the show. I couldn't help but laugh when I saw those seats, and I'm like, I can smell those seats through my TV. Like, I know what those smell like. First place in Charlotte was Opus Independent, and their show, I believe, is called Underneath the London Sky. They had a pre-show with a voiceover, and somebody was clapping or something right as they announced the show title, and I'm like, so I had to rewind it like 3 or 4 times to try to catch it, but I believe it's Underneath the London Sky. And it's like a Mary Poppins chimney sweep theme, but it's not fully Mary Poppins. It's more chimney sweep, but they open with Mary Poppins music, and then they have Step in Time, I believe, from like maybe the Broadway version later on. It's a nice show with some good moments. The flag feature is a definite highlight. They have props in the back right corner with platforms and then little slides. And the majority of the transitions happen through there. They don't really use the slides or anything. Like, they don't run down them, like toss and run down them. They're just kind of like there. They do have some really strong weapons, and I think they're still waiting on uniforms. I'm pretty sure they were still in their practice blacks, which honestly, I've seen a lot of color guards in practice blacks. And my question is, what's going on at these uniform designers, these uniform companies? Like, we're in March. Like, people need their uniforms, y'all. Come on. But it was a very, very cute show. It had good variations in energy. I liked it. I believe they're going to Dayton. I don't know. I haven't checked. I've been so overwhelmed with color guard lately. So but we'll be checking, and we'll be monitoring them. So good luck to Opus. Moving on to Scholastic Open. So we had 13 guards in total competing in finals, but we're only going to be covering 5. So we're going to do the top three in Texas, and then there were 2 in Charlotte. Third place, Texas, Austin Regional was James Bowie High School, and they're a Hope Guard. They're doing Hope. Their show is called Echoes of Me. And they have, I'm pretty sure it's picture frames. I couldn't tell if it was mirrors or picture frames printed on their floor, but then they set up a couple of actual, like, practical props that stand up from the floor. So I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be picture frames. It gives a lot of dimension to the floor. And then they mix Hope with a piece by Rachmaninoff. My phone would not recognize the piece, but it's a very popular classical piece. So they kind of do that, kind of like how we were talking about Milford mixed it with Moonlight Sonata. This one mixes it with a piece by Rachmaninoff. They use a super bright color flag for the ending feature, and they have some nice strong moments, and the weapons are pretty good. They got some cleaning to do. It's getting difficult to watch the Hope Guards because I have a standard with Warren Central at this point, and you're trying to understand, like, Warren Central is a world guard. Bowie is an open guard, and like I was watching Havelock in Charlotte, and they're just an A guard, and you don't want to compare the guards to each other. But when you see the song so much, it's hard to not, because when a guard like Warren Central nails a specific part of the song, that becomes like your standard of what that part of the song should look like, and then you see how somebody else their take on it, and you're like, I like the other one better. But that's not what we should be doing, right? But it's hard to do that because we're seeing this show so much. Second place was Westlake High School, and their show is called Gratitude. And they have a really pretty, it's mainly black floor with purple swirls on it. And Watching the show, I think I figured it out. I think it's supposed to look like a piece of fabric that's just kind of like was like just dropped on the floor. So it has those natural like curves and folds in it. You know, if you just took like a big blanket and just kind of tossed it on the floor, how it just kind of naturally like folds over itself. They use pieces of fabric and run around with them. They start with they use music by Alanis Morissette. They start with Mercy, which is what my phone was telling me it is, and then they move into Thank You, which I did know that song. And it's a pretty show that uses pinks and purples. My daughter loved it because pink and purple are her absolute favorite colors. And then they eventually move into a golden flag section at the end, and they have a cute little silent feature because the song goes "Thank you, silence," and then they literally do a silent feature. It's like maybe 16 counts. It's really quick right after it, but it was a cute, like intellectual nod, like, oh, the lyric said "Thank you, silence." Now we're going to be silent. Very nice show. First place was Pearland High School. Now, Texas people correct me. They said Pearland all weekend, so that's what I'm going with. I've also heard it pronounced Pearland, like with P, like a pearl, and then I've heard Pearland. So somebody correct me, let me know, just because I don't know and I don't want to mispronounce your name. Their show's called Little Girl Blue, and they're using that song by Nina Simone. They have a cobblestone floor with like water puddles on it, so it like symbolizes it's raining, and then they have a single bench in the middle. And the costumes are really pretty. They're in shades of muted blues and whites. So like a slate blue, a periwinkle, like these grayish blues. They're muted. It's really nice. And they mix it with like whites as well. And just kind of in, you know, different like athleisure wear, so it's, blue pants and a white shirt, or maybe a blue shirt and white pants. It's all mixed together, and it's done very well. They open the show with a very quick flag feature, which was nice, and do a rifle solo, and they're very good. The show is highlighted by the weapon features. They have very very strong weapons, and they write their show around that. And then they have a quick little silent feature for them too in the flag ensemble. And yeah, it was nice. I mean, I didn't find anything like crazy notable about it, like oh my god, they're doing this, but I like the show. Let's move over to Charlotte. Second place was Holly Springs, and they were promoted from A class last year. So they were third place at Dayton in A class. They were the Anne Frank show, if you don't remember them. And their show is called What the World Needs Now. And the show is all about spreading love. And they have 5 large white props that cover up words on the floor. They're just like rectangular stage props on wheels. And they eventually move them and reveal the words underneath. And the words are love, hope, kindness, peace, and equality. But the props also open up. So they reach to the front and open it up. So it's open up kind of like a chalkboard kind of thing. And they're black with big red letters on them. And they say hate, scorn, fear, and shame. So they open up to the negative words, and then they end up closing it and then moving to the positive words. They've done a great job with transitioning to open. They have a lot of talent. And before we go any farther, I have to give massive props to the performer who had the equipment malfunction in prelims. So she does this little, or the work has them, hold the silk and do this little silk spin around them, holding, and the flag came untaped right at the middle at the tab and slid to the end of the pole. And you could see her panic for like 2 seconds. And this is going into the flag feature, right? And she quickly composed herself. And then, like an absolute beast, she powered through the flag feature with her flag completely bunched up at the top of the pole. The crowd went nuts for her, and deservedly so. I made a point to watch her in finals, and everything went off without a hitch. So I'm sure she was very excited about that. But kudos to you. I think I would have done the exact same thing you did because, we train our kids, to do the smart thing. If your equipment breaks, sometimes you're like, just get off the floor. Like if your rifle strap breaks and you can't spin it or whatnot. And she was like, you know what, flag feature, I have to get in there. I'm just going to power through. She threw the tosses the best she could. And honestly, I mean, you noticed it because obviously her flag was completely bunched at the end of the pole, but she was powering through and the crowd caught on real quick. So little claps for you. I'm not going to clap too loud because I don't want to bust your ears, but great job. I like the show overall. Like I said, they're very strong. They've done a great job of transitioning to open. I hope they can make finals. The finals run was much better for them. They had a rough prelims run, and that's not just the flag feature thing. I think, it's kind of a big local show for them because they are from the area. And I think a lot of eyes are on them being a promoted guard. So they did much better in finals. And if they continue that energy into Dayton, they're going to be great. First place was Dobbins Bennett, and they were closely in first place. And I know you've seen the reels and the pictures of them. They're the Gargoyle show. They're the ones that have the elaborate makeup and mask with the horns. And I'm sure you've seen them. They had a tough run in finals. They really did. They have 5 raised platforms around the floor. They have 1 in the center and then 4 in the corners, and they have little stairs, that they go up and down on them. And I like the show. They use a cover of, I believe it's called Fly Away or Someday I'll Fly Away from Moulin Rouge, the movie way back when. And I wonder if the masks hinder their vision at all because I feel like watching them, like my viewpoint is that they're struggling to see their equipment. And it could be the headpieces because when you see like an up close picture, you can see like that it's thick and it sits away from their face a little bit, and it's cut above the eyebrows. So their up vision could be limited a little bit. Could have been nerves. I don't know. I just felt like they were hindered a little bit. So I hope that they can power through that because they have a lot of talent. They're doing some really crazy stuff on the floor. Honestly, it wasn't their day. They still came in first. It was a tough run for them. They have a beautiful orangey pink flag that they pull out, and then they have a soloist that does a double swing flag of it. Then they go back at the end of the show. They go back to posing as if they're gargoyles, like on the side of a building. So it's a cool concept. The production value is amazing. The costuming is amazing, and they've got a whole month to clean it up. So no worries there. So good luck to Dobbins Bennett. Let's move on to Independent Open. Texas. Second place, we had Industry, and their show is called Not Alive. Once again, so they have a pre-show that is super glitchy and distorted. It's intended. I've watched this a couple times. I don't know what this show is supposed to be. I have no clue. The soundtrack is wild. It's just kind of like all over the place. And I don't know if it's supposed to be like an alien invasion, and that's kind of like why the music is distorted at the beginning during the pre-show. They have 3 strips of floor, like, on the right side, like a small, medium, and a large that go horizontal, and there's something on it. I don't know what it's supposed to be. I'm sure the Texans know what it is because it looks like it's some sort of Texas monument. I have no clue what it is. Then they have some backdrops that just look like, like the Texas power towers, for electrical lines and everything that you see. But I really have no clue what the show is about. I watched this and I'm like, I have no idea what's happening. I don't know what the story is, because they have like 3 movements of music and they're yeah, so sorry. I don't get it. I didn't get it. I was confused. Hopefully somebody can explain it to me. First place was Undaunted, and their show is called Together, and they have a floor. It's weird. So I didn't realize I caught them in prelims. I didn't see the setup, and so I thought they had like individual floor pieces, but no, they have a full floor that has a strip of blue, I believe, across the front, and then it's black, and then they have 4 individual squares that go from orange on the left side to blue on the right. Everything is orange and blue in this show, which I think they do. They work with very well. And then they have vertical props that connect to the back of those squares that stand up. So you have a square on the floor, and then at the back of that square, they put a vertical prop that kind of continues the design in the square. They're minimal designs, but it continues the design. And then about 2/3 of the way through the show, they lay those down. I don't know why. I don't know what the storyline is there, but they do. They lay them down and then they become flat. They do a lot of cool partner work with rifles at the beginning with lots of weight sharing and kind of cool holds and grabs. They're not lifts, but they look like you'd be prepping for a lift. It's really cool. Like I said, I don't understand the props. They go behind them, but then they run behind them and they move around behind them without like staging it. Like I can see like people just leisurely walking. Oh, my flag's over behind prop number 1. I got to go walk over there. Like it's not like they dance over there behind it. They're literally just strolling along. And everything seems to filter through the center 2 props because there's slots in between each one. So there's a gap between props 1 and 2, 2 and 3, and 3 and 4. And everything seems to go between props 2 and 3 in the center of the floor. The absolute highlight of the show is the flag feature at the end. They have everybody on lame flags, and they have a blue lame and like a copper lame to symbolize the orange. It's very pretty, very well done. It's written and layered beautifully to really highlight the 2 colors and the back and forth and everything. It's beautiful. The ending flag feature is the absolute best part of the show. If you see it out there, make sure you're watching for that flag feature. Let's move over to Charlotte. Third place was Reverie, and their show is called After Dawn. And this was another one that I couldn't get behind. They start with the floor folded up, So the left side of the floor is exposed, like the left third, and then it's folded up vertically so they can pull it all the way across the floor to the right later on in the show. They use a house as not a home, and then they overlay it onto some strings, but they don't line up. And the soundtrack is so distracting because it's like you took two pieces that have no like harmony, no melody, they don't go together, and you just laid them on top of each other. It's very, very strange, and it wasn't one of my favorites. I'm sorry to the people of every some of their weapon spinners are incredibly talented. They were pulling out some great weapon tricks and stuff, but just the overall show, the music is really just so distracting. Think Onyx last year when they just had the piano note over and over and over. The soundtrack just becomes so distracting that you can't take in what's going on the floor, or it distracts from what's going on the floor. They're another guard that I think are in practice blacks. Please, people, get these guards their uniforms. They paid a lot of money for them and they want to be able to show them off. Get those uniforms to these guards. Second place was Noir Independent. There shows the art of composition. This is another typewriter show that we were talking about earlier. And it starts strong. They start with saber and blue flag, then they move into an all rifle section, and they have some nice quirky music for this section. And then the third section is a flag feature with a lot of velocity. I like that, like speed. They're like, we're gonna spin, and it's really nice. And then they move into rifle and flag at the end of the show. It is a solid show. I don't know what's going on with them score wise because they went out at the Huntsville Regional in prelims, got like an 80, I believe. Then finals, they dropped to 79.7, whatever. Still in the same, but their scores seem to be going backwards, and I don't know why. And I watch the shows, and I don't think that's warranted. I mean, I'm not a judge. The judges, I don't know what the judges are thinking and whatnot. Different panels and whatnot. I really like the show. I think the show should be doing better score wise than it is, and I don't know why it's not. First place in Charlotte was JMU Nuance Open. You've seen the reels on this one. This is the one where the girl falls into the brown water. We're going to talk about that. Their show is called On the Rocks, and they're using Lover Please Stay by Nothing But Thieves. And this is, the whiskey show. We talked about that. You've seen it. Everybody's like, what is this? What is this? Now you know. It's JMU Nuance. And it's all about a relationship falling apart. And, what I get from it is kind of like drowning your sorrows in whiskey, and alcohol, kind of coping with the loss and breakup of relationship. They have the big glass prop with the quote unquote whiskey in it. And they have four little ice cube props that they kind of stage around it that they end up pushing together later to make a little platform. And then in the front left corner, they have a table and two chairs where everybody is laying around it, and then they have a couple sitting in the chairs. And in the pre-show, like when they're waiting to start, like they won't look at each other. They're just like they keep looking from side to side. You can see the tension in their energy. So it's like they set the tone right away. Like this is, about a relationship that's rocky. It's not working, right? The relationship is on the rocks, right? Get it? And they sell it well from the start. They move into saber and flag, and then, like I said, they take the ice cube blocks and they push them into a platform and do this really cool lift on it. Like one girl standing there, and then another girl back bends backwards, so her head is between the girl's knees, and then she grabs a leg, and then she leans back. And you have to watch the video because it's really hard to explain, and I'm sure I'm doing a terrible job at explaining it. But it's a really cool lift, and the show flows really well. And it's one of those shows that looks deceptively simple, but it's not. Like you're watching it and you're like, this looks a little easy. But then when you start really looking at it, you're like, oh wait, no, it's not. It's one of those that's just it's written well that way. The song builds and builds and builds. There's a great rifle ripple toss that they do, like kind of around a form into then like four performers that do it on a group toss together. And then the flag ensemble starts, and then we have the dancer in the glass, and we've seen it. She does the leg extension where she's doing like the split, where she's basically upside down, and then she drops into the water, and then she does it again to end the flag feature, right? And it ends with a couple separating. She's in the glass, and then he walks over to the table and kind of grabs the actual like whiskey glass that's sitting on the table, and they just kind of stare at each other. It's a very emotional show. It's really well done. And then they have the entire A guard come out with towels to clean up the water because everybody's like, how do they clean up the water? That's how. The A guard is there is waiting, and their job is to get the water off the floor. I hope they continue to do well. I know they have one more regional. They're at Bethlehem, I believe, and then they go to Dayton. Fingers crossed. Let's move on to Scholastic World, and we're going to stay at Charlotte because they had one unit. It was Cleveland High School, and they are doing the Juliet letters. It's a beautiful floor of old letters, handwritten, with like the big script style cursive, that's really difficult to read. And then they have kind of like floral backgrounds behind the letters. They start with an opening body statement, then they go to everyone on Sabre, and then they go into a beautifully layered purple and magenta flag feature. The show continues to speed up, and then they move into everyone on rifle, featuring a bunch of solo tosses. And then they finish with a gorgeous pink flag, trend alert, with kind of like a cream end on it. It's a nice show. I liked it. I thought it was beautiful. I feel like they've been really growing that program there, and I think this is their second year in World, and I hope they do well. I'm hoping they can make it into finals. It's a pretty show. I like it. Let's move over to Texas. Okay, two really cool shows here. We're gonna talk about Flower Mound first. They were second. Their show is called Paradigm Shifts, and this show is the most innovative show I've seen all year. It is super cool. It's not the strongest world show. I mean, obviously Woodlands is there, but design-wise and just the concepts, I think this is so stinking cool. So they have just like a solid black floor, and they're in pink and white uniforms, pink shirt, white pants. They have like pink glasses on. I think they're wearing like a pink sock too, something like that. And they have these white, I call them scooter circle props. So you remember those old scooters you would sit in elementary PE that, sit like 3 inches off the ground, just a piece of plastic, and you'd, play crab soccer on them or whatever. um, they're kind of like that, but they're bigger. They're white circles, and they're probably big enough that you could stand on it in just in a conservative second position, right? One person, they don't stand on them, but you could. That's how big they are. And I believe they have 18 of them on the floor. And the way they move these around the floor is so cool. The music is very electronic and quirky. It's a very minimal music soundtrack, but they take advantage of that when they're moving these props around. Like they're all just kind of doing like body stuff or whatever, and then just one circle will just shoot across the floor. Like literally, like the performer just kind of kicks it, and it'll go from the front left corner to the back right corner. And there's a performer, she gets there just at the last second and just kind of accepts it, and just immediately it just continues into whatever everybody else is doing. And then another one shoots across, and then this one over here shoots across. It is so cool. The way they thought this out is just, I love it. They slide around on them on their stomachs. They'll get on their hands and knees, and then another performer will grab the person and spin them around. They make cool patterns on the floor in the staging, like they use it to cut off sections of the floor or to highlight performers. I was pleasantly surprised like this. I really dig it. They have this really, really great flagline toss in the back of the floor. It's like a double 45 with a squad underneath it or whatever, but there's like, 18 kids back there that throw it, and it was really clean. And then while they're doing that, the rifles are on the front, and they just put their rifle down on the circle, and then they shoot it to the person next to them, like around like a rectangle form. And then they pick it up, whatever, and then they shoot the prop back. And then after the flag toss, then the rifles kick the circles to the back flags, and it's so cool. Like they're not going to Dayton, and this breaks my heart because this show I think needs to be seen at Dayton. I would love this to be on national flow where everybody can see it, where everybody's watching, Dayton prelim, semis, finals, whatever. Flower Mound, you've gained a fan in me. Like I not that I wasn't a fan before, but I didn't really know much about the program that I saw. So it's like I really like this. They still have some cleaning to do, but it's just so creative. I just love that it's just I love like when you get to World, and it happens in Open too, where these designers get these ideas and just how they put this on the floor. And we're going to talk about this with Woodlands is prop manipulation. I'm just dumbfounded sometimes by people's prop manipulation and how they come up with this stuff. But if you haven't seen Flower Mound, find a way to see them. I'm sure somebody put it on YouTube. You didn't hear that from me, but I do know lots of people like to put these on YouTube, even though it's kind of against the rules. But, between you and me, it's probably out there somewhere. You should probably go check it out. Yeah, go check that out. I love it. Flower Mound, I love it. I've watched it like 3 or 4 times. I love the prop work. It's so cool. First place was the Woodlands, and their show is called Departures. And y'all, this show is incredible. Their score was too low. I'm sorry. I'm going to be that person. The judges got this one wrong. I don't know how this only got like an 84 and change. I was chatting with friends, and after prelims, I'm like, that's going to get like an 85 in prelims. Easy. and they only got an 82. I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Are you kidding? Really?" And I was like, "Okay, maybe they had a massive penalty. I'll wait for the recaps to come out. Maybe they had a massive penalty, and that's why their score still." No, nope. Judges were just being conservative with their numbers for some reason because when they got to finals, they bumped up to an 84, and nope, nope, no penalty. Where do we start? So they have a bunch of props that are 3 sets of chairs like you would see in an airport terminal, or a train station, and they use, like, a blue mesh, and they're chrome, so it's, like, 3 seats connected, and they do so many things with these props, and so much happens on the floor, you see something new each time, but it doesn't look chaotic. I don't know how they stage this show. I don't like, it's just when you watch it, if when you see it, you'll understand, like, my struggle to understand because it's so good and so much is happening, but you don't feel overwhelmed by what's happening on the floor. Like, there are solid ideas and solid moments. It doesn't just feel like chaos, but there's so much going on. Like I said, their prop work is crazy. They pick these seats up, they toss and then go under them. They have this really cool feature where they have like the weapon exchange, where one person tosses and they run away, and then somebody comes up behind them and catches it, right? So they do that, but they have a person laying in the seats, like laying down. A rifle will toss, somebody lifts the seats up, so the person laying down stands up, and then they walk out of the seats as they're being stood up and catch the gun. Like, it's just like, it's crazy. They flip the seats around as they lift them. Their final, before they hit the flag feature, they lift it up, and then one of the performers does a forward roll toss underneath. The rifle goes over the seats, but they go under the seats. It's just like, it is wild. So crazy. The saber rotation. In the beginning of part 2, they have 3 performers get on saber. And they throw like a saber 6 together. Could be higher than that. The rotations were like identical. Like, I mean, the talent in this group is crazy. And I'm really trying to control myself to speak slower because I'm so excited about this show. And I'm really trying not to turn into a motor mouth about this. And then in part 3, kind of before they get to the flag feature, they have like, I don't know, 12 on rifle and 12 on saber. Might be more than that, maybe 15 and 15. I mean, they have a lot of performers on the floor, and they're all insanely talented. But the Sabres throw this ensemble 6, I want to say, and it is just spotless. You can see like they rotate the same. They catch it is crazy. And right before it, they threw this blade quad that they catch under their leg like it was nothing. Like you asked them to do drop spins. There's so much velocity. I mean, these kids are spinning. They are spinning and they make it look effortless. It is just, and it was so clean. Like finals, I would say was near Dayton levels of clean. This is why I'm like, oh, they're going to get like an 87 or an 88 because it was crazy hard and crazy well designed and clean. And then they get an 84. Excuse me? Do I need to put on my Karen wig and ask to speak to the manager here? The level of talent in this guard is absolutely insane. They have like 40 performers on the floor. I'm guessing I didn't count. And they're all bananas crazy. Like there are no filler kids on this guard. Like they are all insanely talented. Like we see guards that, you can see the divide, right? Especially on the lower ends in A class. Like, okay, you have your 3 or 4 weapon kids that are really good and your flag line, maybe they're newer, because you don't have the depth in the program like these world guards do. This guard, no. There is no weak link. I watched this 3 times, like as it happened. Like I immediately rewound and watched it again as soon as they were done. And I was speechless the first time I watched it. I was just sitting there and I was just like, I was doing this. I'm like, and I'm one of those people when I'm watching Color Guard, I'm not very vocal. Like I'm not the person who's going, yes, and woo. Like I'm not. I take it all in, I observe. And if I vocally respond to you, you have impressed me. And I was just sitting there watching this and I'm like, Jesus, holy words, and this and that. And I'm like, wow, I could not stop reacting. And that tells me a lot. And then when it was done, I was just like, wow. That's all I could say was wow. Like there are no words. Yeah. It's out there on YouTube. Like I said, the other one, go find it before it gets pulled down. Yeah, I can't imagine what this is like live. I talked about this last week with the loss of energy through the camera. If there was a loss of energy here, wow. Yeah, Woodlands. I think you got screwed score-wise, but Wow. Wow, I can't wait for Dayton. I cannot wait for Dayton. Scholastic World is gonna be crazy. So best of luck to y'all. Whew. Yeah, I still have to do Independent World. I mean, I could sit here and talk about Woodlands. I mean, I could sit here and talk about Woodlands, Warren Central. I mean, there are gonna be some hot shows this year. There's gonna be some hot shows at Dayton this year. Let's move on to Independent World, and we'll stay in Texas because they only had one. They had Invictus. Their show is called This, THIS, This. I'm not sure what this is about. We're getting into a world where concepts can get a little more abstract, so I'm not really sure what this was about. They have a lot of performers on the floor. They start with blue flags in the beginning and they go to pink at the end. Like I said, trend alert, pink flags in the end. They do lots of rifle tricks and tosses at the beginning. The flag line does a forward roll toss under a horizontal right at the front of the floor. The show is strange, and it's also very dirty, very dirty. They have a lot of cleaning to do, but I think they're really trying to embrace kind of like the quirky and the velocity of everything. So they have a month, lots of time to clean. Coolest part, they have this crazy flag exchange where they take the flag by the top of the pole, right, and they swing it around and they throw it, and it goes sailing to the back of the floor, and then they have people in the back doing it to the front. I mean, this isn't one of those little like do 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 here, take my flag kind of thing. No, they chuck this thing and they fly. It's not even like one of the pop exchanges. They do like a lasso flick toss. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. You would do this lasso toss from the pole. No, they're doing it from the top end cap by the silk, and then launch this flag to the other opposite end of the floor. And they do this with like 12 people. Really cool. Really cool. It's in the pink flag section. So moving over to Charlotte, third place was First Flight, and their show is called Narcissist or Narcissist. Once again, I couldn't catch it with the voiceover. And they have mirrors everywhere. We're seeing mirrors a lot this year too. Theirs are just kind of like amoeba shaped though. They're not like squares or circles or whatever. They're just kind of like blobs, and they're all kind of like different shapes. And they have, and they're about the size of your torso, maybe a little bit bigger, about half a person tall. Each member has one, and they're doing a creepy version of "Can't Help Falling in Love with You" and "You Are So Beautiful" kind of mixed together, like a little mashup. And then it goes into a cover of "Never Enough," the song from The Greatest Showman. They're in pretty purple uniforms. The mirrors just kind of stay on the side and then along the front. Two-thirds of the way, they start moving them into the floor, and they're lined up across the front for the flag feature. But they don't really do a whole lot with the mirrors. They do have a cool part where a couple flags come out where they have a mirror in their hand. It's a little bit bigger in their hand, and it's clearly like there's a strap to hold it on. So they're looking at themselves, and then they're spinning the flag with the other hand. So that was cool. They have some decent weapon tricks, and they really try to crank up the velocity at the end of the show. Yeah, I mean it was fine, world class. It's just it's hard because you have First Flight, and then the other two were Etude and Paramount, and it's just you almost feel like they're in different classes just because of the level of the other two guards, and that's not meant in a dig at First Flight. It's just when you watch it, you see the obvious like gap. But, it was a fine show. Second place was Etude, and their show is called Wild Geese, and this show is stunning. It is beautiful, and I'm usually not one of those ones that like the overly voiceover, the poem read shows. I'm usually not. I love this one, and it's just so good, and I can tell you why I love it. There is one reason why this immediately shot up my list, and it is because their flag line is superb, and they feature the crap out of their flag line. And if you've listened to previous episodes, I love flag. I love a flag moment. I love flag lines. The pink flag section especially is amazing. Like, they spin with speed, they spin with difficulty, they feature them. They have these planks that they kind of pull out. They're really thin, like a 1x4 plank that they pull out, and they'll be spinning around them, and then they toss and go under them. But they do this with the flags, not the weapons. They're the best flag line in Independent World, hands down. This is why I immediately love them. And the show is great too. Don't get me wrong. I love the show. But when I just saw the flag and how good the flag line is and how much difficult work they're doing, and it's clean, and it's got effort changes and speed changes. It's just, yes, the pink flag section especially is amazing. But the show, I'm going to stop talking about the flag line, talk about the rest of the show. They have like a light kind of classical music and it picks up and slows down, but it has a reading of the poem Wild Geese over it. The narrator is the author of the poem. It's taken from like an interview. And they're in these gorgeous brown uniforms that have a hint of white on the breast, and it resembles a Canada goose. And yes, it is Canada goose, not Canadian goose. It is Canada goose. Like it's those subtle things like, oh, okay, we're doing a show, we're calling it Wild Geese, with the poem Wild Geese, and then we're gonna use these brown costumes. But just the way they intentionally made the uniform to give that essence of, a goose's feathers. Beautiful. They have this big round black stage that they move around the floor. And because I was watching something else, I'd always miss the stage moving. So it clearly moves around well because I don't like, oh, look, the stage is moving. It flows so beautifully. Like I said, I'm obsessed with how much they feature their flag line. It's an excellent show. Seriously, honestly, I'm gonna say I think their flag line is better than their weapon line. I really think the flag line is that good. Yeah, go watch it. Gorgeous, stunning, lovely. Yes, etude. And then your winner was Paramount, and their show is called Shout. Their floor is like a chaotic mix of like I think it's supposed to resemble sound waves. They're black and white lines in different sections all over the floor. Think kind of like a zebra print, but they're kind of turned and shifted so it doesn't like flow together nicely. It's meant to like cut off lines and everything. And I know I'm going to say this with Paramount because they are an elevated guard and they have elevated design. I know I'm not getting all of their references and what they're trying to do on the floor just because of how in depth the design is. I know I'm not getting it all. In the opening, they do a cool like body form where where they're on their stomachs and they pull a leg up in the air behind them, kind of like looks like a yoga pose. I'm sure it's supposed to symbolize something. I don't care what it's supposed to symbolize because it's really cool and it's pretty and I like the effect. They're using a cover of "Shout" by Tears for Fears, and they have a lot of performers on the floor and a lot is going on. But it's all controlled though, just kind of like last year. You saw last year where there's a lot happening. It's like that. Um, they have really cool flags of like a bright green with a black and white trim lines, and they're maybe 12 inches deep down the pole. Similar to like last year when they slid the flag to the top of the pole and spun it. It has that effect, but it's an actual full flag. It's not bunched. It's like the flag itself is maybe 12 inches deep, and then as long as a normal silk, away from the pole. They eventually transition to a full flag that's the same design of the top, and then they add like a magenta panel at the bottom, making it a full flag. They do a really cool weapon and flag feature with big tosses. It's super effective. Just like I said, what you'd expect. There's all this going on, and then they come together and you have this big, huge moment of weapons and flags, and yeah, beautiful. Near the end of the show, probably the last third, they pull the back of the floor forward to remove some of the lines, and it's just pure black. I don't know what it's meant to represent. I don't. Hopefully somebody can explain it to me. I openly admit that I'm not the smartest at figuring out show designs at times. So it leads into the flag feature, and once again, we're pulling out like a pinkish flag. Now in on Flow, this looked pink. I've seen like pictures on Instagram where it's almost like a red and it's got lines of yellow in it and everything. And I'm like, this is not the flag I saw. Like, it's crazy how things can get distorted through the camera. But a very beautiful, I'm gonna call it a pink ending flag feature. But seriously, why are so many guards using pink for their ending flag? I mean, it's crazy how we're so secretive of our shows, because nobody wants to talk about what they're doing and this and that, and then they go to premieres, they can show everybody what they've been working on, and then everybody's doing the same thing. You've got all these guards using hope. You have all these guards spinning pink for their ensemble flags. Like, how does this happen? And then they end at the front of the show with body, and they're acting like they're screaming and shouting and such, but but they're actually not. It's like miming. It's an interesting show. I can't say I understand it completely because I don't, but it's exceptional, and it's what you'd expect from Paramount. It's well done. They're insanely talented. They're doing insane work. It's what you'd expect from a Paramount show. I don't get it, but that's me. That's a me thing. That's not them. And that's it. Those are all the guards that we're going to cover. We saw a lot more. And that's going to be it for today. Next week, we will be recapping the Manhattan Beach regional. And thankfully, it's just one regional. So it'll be a little easier to cover. We're going to see Fantasia, Vox Artium, Icon, Arcadia, El Dorado, Chino Hills, Ayala. I think Palm Desert Charter Middle School is there. I mean, we're going to see all the California guards that haven't been on flow yet. So, and I think that will be our last one because outside of that, there's just a handful of guards we haven't seen yet. And like the Florida guards, we're not going to see because like Flanagan is not going to a televised regional. So we'll have to wait to Dayton to see things like that, like West Broward, all those Florida guards, Tarpon. I know Tarpon's not going to Dayton, but they're not at a televised regional. I think Tarpon is going to the Southeast regional. So we should see them there. But unless they go to that Southeast Power Regional, we're not going to see them either until Dayton. If you're going out this week, best of luck. If you're having a rehearsal weekend, drink lots of water, eat some healthy snacks. Remember, take care of yourself, self-care, breathe, right? Let's find our joy, right? We can take time to find joy for ourselves. That's why I'm here. This is my joy. This is one of the few things that I have to bring me joy these days. So good luck to everybody. Have a great week. I'll catch you next week. Shoot me a message over on Instagram if you want to say hi. I love chatting with you all. But until then, stay safe, stay fabulous, and remember at the end of the day, it's just flags in a gym.